All right, welcome back to Keepin' It Comic, and today we're picking up here back on Venom in issue number 36. Now, this is a tie-in to the Venom War main storyline that we just started here on this channel, and in this one, we're following up here on future Dylan Brock, where we get to see what happened moments before he met current time Dylan Brock, before he told him to get ready here for the war. Now, there are a few key things that Cable Dylan, which I know is what some of us are calling him here, there are a few things that he needs to do in the past to prevent the end of the world. And at the end of the world, that's basically Eddie Brock becoming a null and destroying the world. And in this one, we get to see the beginning of the plan to prevent that from happening here. Oh, that was a mouthful. So we pick up on future Dylan Brock here somewhere in the future out in New York. Now we catch him on the run from some giant space-like snake robot looking creatures here. Now Dylan finds himself in a rather compromising position as three of those creatures converge on him. Now, just as one of them was just about to hit him, he was able to cock back and shoot a shockwave from his gun, which takes out one of them. But unfortunately, like I said, there were two more, one of which seems to have some symbiote-like tentacles pick him up and was essentially killing him. But just in the nick of time here, we have some reinforcements that come in to save his behind. The first of which is Norman Harold Osborn, the grandson of Norman Osborn and son of Harry Osborn. Some of you might be more familiar with him as the Red Goblin. Then we also have Elizabeth Allen, who, as we found out from the first main line here, the first issue of Venom War, is the current CEO of Alchemix. Some of you may know her as the host for the symbiote named Misery, and she's also the mother of Norman Harold Osborn. Now, while Dylan is alive because of him, he is not necessarily thrilled to see them because he knows with them being out in the open air that the radiation is going to burn their brains out, as he says. But he also knows that they're putting themselves in a lot of danger with those creatures around, because we are seeing here, like what we're seeing here in the future is indeed the end of the world. Now, the creatures are hunting people down and the world basically just looks like rubble. But Liz and Normie, they don't much care, right? They are willing to sacrifice themselves. Hence the reason why Liz, in response to his statement about their brains being burnt out, is like, listen, if you make it, it's not going to matter, will it, right? Because ultimately, like, they're willing to sacrifice themselves in order to prevent the end of the world. Now, I know you're probably also wondering, who was that person that's swinging through behind him? Well, that is none other than Bailey Briggs, aka Spider-Boy. Yep, he's not much of a boy anymore in the future, and he mentions that there are more of these creatures that are coming in. In fact, there are dozens of them coming in. Now, unfortunately, everyone here except Dylan is about to die, which is the reason why we basically see Dylan saying here, I love you all are everything to me. And with that being said, we see more of those creatures flying in. Liz goes and attacks first because she doesn't want to have to see her son Norman die, while Normie screams after her and then goes straight into his demise as well, followed by Bailey. And then Dylan mentions in his thoughts that if he had known that by the end of this, that this would happen, meaning that if he had to watch them die, he would have forgotten them all, is what he says, that maybe he never would have left. To which my question is, why would he forget them? What exactly is this plan that he has, to which every friend that he had left was willing to sacrifice for it? Well, to kind of start to unravel that puzzle, we have to jump back to the current time for that. Now, in the current timeline here, we pick up on future Dylan speaking with the current time Dylan. Now, this happened back in the first issue here of the main Venom War storyline, but they included it in this issue as well, but this time from future Dylan's perspective. Now, there is so much that future Dylan wants to tell current Dylan. He mentions how he thought the hardest part of this mission would be to convince current Dylan of who he was. However, he finds that the hardest part is all the things that he doesn't tell him. He mentions how he wants to tell him to stay with her, which By the way, we have no idea who her is. He mentions another thing about not pulling the trigger and a few other things as well. But he abstains because he realizes that he is not here to correct the mistakes of a young boy, and that there's a much bigger mission here that is of more importance, obviously. And that is this, that he needs to kill the future. And he mentions that. He says that there are 3 points in the past that he needs to push on in order to do so. So my interpretation of this is that he wants to find a way, right, that Eddie Brock never bonds with the Venom symbiote, which would prevent all this from happening in the first place. It would prevent, right, the future world that Dylan is from, that he's seen so far. And it would also prevent Dylan from existing as well. And it's kind of funny because, like, ironically, he needs current Dylan to help him to do that, which is kind of what I believe he's keeping from Dylan, right? Like, what's one of the big major things that he's keeping here from current Dylan. So he needs current Dylan to be able to help him to do so, and he needs current Dylan to become a weapon. And if this doesn't work, his father, Eddie Brock, will become a no, and the entire world will be destroyed. So after this conversation here with Dylan, he goes back even further into the past here to make progress towards that goal. So he ends up scaring the crap out of some civilians in the process, but here he is looking for what he says is a man with molten skin, who was reported to have plowed through the streets like a Sherman tank. And guess who shows up? This gold man walking in the middle of the street. And as a civilian driver honks at him because, dude, you're walking in the middle of the road, right? And calls him some name, he gets pissed off and then does what? He plows through the man's car. Now, Dylan wanted to go after him, but then paused because he mentions to us, he's like, there's supposed to be someone else that's supposed to show up here, right? And then right on the wall, we see a shadow of Spider-Man who comes swooping in, but we don't get to see the showdown because we shift over here to a restaurant with Eddie Brock. Now, Eddie is sitting with Anne Weighing. Oh my goodness, I just butchered that name. Now, she is Dylan Brock's mom, right? Now, Eddie doesn't notice that there is a man over to his left that is watching him from the next table over. And as it pertains to where the Molten Man is right now, Dylan knows that both Eddie and Anne would not be too far away from where he is, and that kind of plays into the story a little bit here. Now, Eddie and Anne have been at this restaurant now for quite some time, from like breakfast to dinner to breakfast. Like, they've been here for quite some time, and Eddie and Anne are playing this game where Eddie's trying to like guess what Anne's middle name is. Now, Dylan mentions that the man over at the other table as well is like listening to their conversation, and how he finds their conversation to be lacking of any sort of significance, and in fact that he finds human mating rituals perplexing. So that leaves us to ask the question here, like, who is this guy and where is he from? So one of the waiters comes over and then interrupts the conversation between Eddie here and Anne, and it lets him know that like Eddie Brock's boss is on the phone, to which Anne notices. She's like, yo, how often does he come here to the point where he's getting calls here from work? This also kind of reminds me as well that they don't have cell phones during this time. So just think about that, like times where there were no cell phones, probably simpler times back then. Now, this gives the mysterious gentleman his opportunity to approach Anne, who immediately says her whole name. Like, he says middle name too. He's like, yo, and whatever, Weighing, right? But then before he could continue the conversation, Eddie comes out and asks the question, Anne, have you ever seen Spider-Man? And then says, grab the camera. So then we jump back to Dylan, who is looking at the exact report that he is about to see live happen, where Molten Man is spiderweb cuffed and being walked to a police car by the police. Now, Dylan mentions here that he is going to create an advantage here for the future, and he calls it a weapon. Now, one factor in this equation here is that he's going to have to see his father in the process of getting this done. Also, who is that interesting person swinging on a spider web up top above him? We'll have to explore that later. Now, interestingly enough, this was also the first time that Dylan would be seeing his mother, right? Eddie and Anne, they were separated when he was born, and she was dead before Dylan could even walk. So this is the first time he's gonna like see her, in person here. Now, unsurprisingly, Molten Man escapes because, let's be real, it looked kind of comical that this dude was just being like handcuffed by spider webs in the first place. It just looked kind of silly. So he breaks through those, right? Which then causes Dylan to kind of step in here. And I forgot to mention this, by the way, there are certain times like when Dylan is thinking that you see like this like Venom thought bubble, like the black bubble with like the white text. And then there are other times where he's thinking and you just see like the regular block with the white background. And when he talks, it's like the regular white background. I just thought it was kind of interesting. So clearly like the Venom symbiote or some symbiote is still bonded with him right now. So Dylan steps in to try and stop Multi-Man from destroying these cops, I guess, only to catch like a solid golden hook to the face, which gives Multi-Man the opportunity to try and escape here. So Dylan symbiotes back on his combat suit here and then goes after him down the alley. Now he fires a gun like that shoots out fire at him here to kind of like slow him down. Now, I assume he was trying to kind of like melt him, but then he uses a like symbiote arm needle to extract something from his body, which clearly means that before like that fire that he was shooting was probably to kind of just like soften up his skin so that he could kind of do this thing and started to extract the stuff from him. Now, either way here, he has him down and it seems as if though that like his plan is kind of working, at least the initial parts of his plan are working here. I don't know. But then Spider-Man shows up. By the way, classic Spider-Man suit with the wings under it. Oh my goodness, this thing looks so good. And now my question is, where does this go from here? So this is issue number 36 here in a nutshell. It's clear what they're doing, right? They're setting up this, it's like a Days of Future Past thing that's going on here. It's kind of like a overused trope, if you ask me. I'm not like super thrilled about it, but at the same time, I'm gonna kind of just give them some time to cook, right? I do it like, it's just funny that like, you know, you look at Dylan Brock, future Dylan Brock, man, looks like Cable with like and then the mustache. I'm like, yo, what are they going for here with this look? So I'm curious to see here what happens as we move forward in these stories. But listen, we're going to be covering Venom War a lot here on this channel. You know, the main storyline issue, the tie-in storyline issues here. We do have a video here where we talk about the first issue of Venom War. So go check out that video as well if you haven't done so already. Like and subscribe for more here on the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when the videos do go live. And as always, guys, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic.